Hi, this is Matt from Work in Fintech. I'm delighted to be joined today by the Lord Mayor of the City of London, William Russell, and he's going to be interviewed by Amrit Khatkar, one of Work in Fintech's founder members, who's doing a Masters in Computer Science at the University of Birmingham. So William, we met 2 years ago in March 2019 on a fintech trade mission to China, and obviously the world has changed a significant amount since then. And then for you in your role, there's been lots of challenges in the last year or so, but obviously lots of opportunity. Something that you probably have deep in your own DNA, that you've managed to get yourself into the role of Lord Mayor, and you can really make a big significant change with where we are now and kind of where we are going forward. But for the people listening to this, can you actually explain what is the role of the Lord Mayor and what does your job entail?
Sure, and thank you, Matt, for this, and good to meet you, Amrit. So I'm the ambassador for financial and professional services for the whole of the UK, and that employs 2.3 million people, of which 2/3 of those employed are outside of London. And normally I would be traveling 100 days of the year, going to over sort of 25 to 30 different countries, promoting financial professional services, which is 7% of the GDP of the UK. It's a massive business industry, 11% of the tax take as well. But that's changed, and I'm in my second year because of COVID-19 as Lord Mayor. And the last time that happened was 1861. And I openly admit that I had never heard of Teams or Zoom until March 2020. And I know many people hadn't, but I have probably reached more people as Lord Mayor than any other Lord Mayor in the history of the mayoralty, and that dates back to 1189. And that's the exciting thing, is that sometimes out of tragedy and events like this, there are positive things. And I think that, from that perspective, that the positive is as Lord Mayor and we're talking specifically about fintech, I think we've reached more people.
And so the city in general has a tradition for being a powerhouse when it comes to financial markets and now more recently fintech. Over the past decade, we've seen the startup space really explode. I think 40% of European tech startups are unicorns, and they're based out of London and the UK. And now moving forward, there's been a strategic alignment for fintech to be a crucial part of that. What are the plans for the Lord Mayor office for not only retaining the UK's crown for fintech, but also outperforming the rest of the world?
So our plans are to continue to encourage fintech and the ecosystem here in the City of London, but as I say, the whole of the UK. Now, if we look back, one of the reasons why fintech has been so successful is because our regulator, the FCA, with Project Innovate dating back 5 or 6 years ago now, started that process. And you know about the sandbox, and now we've got the digital sandbox. And so we'll continue to stay ahead of others. And I think that's a critical part of it. But also, the other part, which is critical, is the talent. And Amrit, we were, talking, you're in Birmingham. Birmingham's got huge amounts of talent. And the good news is a lot of that talent staying in Birmingham, having left one of the 5 universities of which you're at one. But Manchester's the same. As I said, 55% I hear are staying now in Birmingham. At Manchester, just to get one over Birmingham, tell me it's 60%. So, but that's what we want. In my day, and I'm alumni of Durham University. We all came to London. But what's happened is that the ecosystem has become UK-wide. I always say there are 146 fintech companies up in Scotland, and that they're different hubs now, and Cardiff and Bristol and Belfast. So it's incredibly exciting, over 1,600 fintechs. So for me, the most important thing we can do is, yes, the main hub is London, and we've got to maintain that hub, because from London that filters out to the rest of the UK, and we've got to encourage that talent to come here. And that's partly that encouragement is London is a great place to live. It's as well, but so is the UK. So it's really maintaining our status as the fintech center of the world, in my opinion, and that ecosystem is very much part of it. And to be frank, it probably starts here in London, and as I said, has a big effect on the rest of the country.
So from my personal experience working in London in the city, one of the greatest benefits is the network effect, particularly for young professionals. The network effect, it really enhances your opportunity to meet new people from different backgrounds, from different professions. From your experience, what do you think makes the city so special?
Well, I mean, I love the history, and when I took over as Lord Mayor, someone turned to me and said, it's about tradition and modernity, and that is one of the things that it's very special. I mean, I'm here, and I'm talking to you from the Mansion House. If I look down the road, I can see St Paul's Cathedral, probably my favourite building in the world. And I just look and say, how did it survive? It survived the Blitz. It was built after the fire of London. As I said, the mayoralty dates back to 1189. So we have all that tradition, which we should never underestimate. We also have the modernity, and I look at the Eastern Cluster and 22 Bishopsgate's now the tallest building, going to house 11,000 people. And then I look at the cultural side of it, the rule of law, the language. I mean, we have it all, and that is one of our biggest assets. And when people come from overseas to work here, their first destination is London, and that's why, in a way, that the immigration and visa system that the Chancellor's just been talking about is absolutely critical. And finally, coming back to my point about maintaining the graduates in Birmingham and Manchester. In fact, it may be becoming even more critical for London because we need to retain, as I said, that talent. But it's critical for the whole UK, and we need that talent to continue to come in. All the big corporates and fintech companies. So I'll give you one example. TransferWise, now Wise, said to me one of the major reasons why they doubled down in London was because of the talent was here in London and they couldn't see it anywhere else. And so that we just got to keep that going. We've got a recovery task force paper that we put out. We've got a city recharged. We've come up with something called the Square Mile Future City. So we're doing a lot looking at the next 5 years, as well as maintaining the climate side, where we've committed to zero emissions by 2040, because your generation has a lot more around social purpose than my generation. We all came to money because that's where all the riches were. But actually now there's this, you're much better at it than we were, and I think London has to maintain that attractiveness around social purpose as well.
Yeah, and I guess an important aspect that we've seen over the past year is how, I guess, some of the aspects of working that we didn't expect to be transformed digitally with the likes of Zoom and of Teams has really come to the fore as a result of the pandemic. And I think recently you stated that the office is not dead, and we're starting to see that transition back. I think a lot more companies are starting to get people more into the office, and there's benefits of, as we've mentioned, networking. Why is it important for companies in particular to continue to invest in offices in the city? And what is the value add for those companies?
So, I mean, I've been talking to many of the companies about this. And as you said, the office is not dead. We're going down the hybrid model. We used to have 525,000 people coming in every day to the Square Mile back in February 2020. We will get back there one day. I'm not going to predict when it will be. But talking to a lot of people around the offices here, we're looking 2 or 3 days coming into the office. Work from home, if anything, has been too successful. I mean, the business is still making good profits. Things are going well, as you know, in fintech. Our friends in the VC world in Silicon Valley are investing in our fintech companies just by doing calls over Zoom, which we never imagined would happen, but it is happening. So as far as and that sustainable footprint has become an important part of the process. But you don't have a culture. It's difficult to create a culture over Zoom. As here we are, the three of us. Having that sort of quiet word over the water cooler, or a beer in the pub, or a glass of wine at the wine bar at the end of the day. Say, what do you think of this? I say there's no such thing as an open door policy on Zoom. And I think that's important. And all the business I'm talking to say the same. So the issues they've got to do is work out which groups come in when. As we know, everyone wants to come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I can tell you it's noticeable already outside how Mondays and Fridays are much quieter, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are very busy. And my children tell me that the new Wednesday's the new Thursday when it comes to going out in the evenings. It is important, but we've got to adapt around it. So when people come into the office, let's say they're commuting from further away because they now have moved further out. Some people are saying, well, we're coming in, we're going to spend Tuesday night, Wednesday night in a hotel in London, go out to the theatre in the evening or go to a restaurant. It's more than just coming to the office, which is why we in the city have to create, better open spaces, more al fresco dining. Maybe it's all year round. And we're adapting to all of those things in order to make the city as attractive as possible. But all I'm hearing is that the office, as I said, isn't dead. It's very important to create that culture, share ideas. I have been known to say that it's difficult to do a huge amount of creativity over Zoom. I think you can do a certain amount of creativity, and we've seen that. But then the idea generation, person to person, you go on that offsite. You can't. An offsite over Zoom isn't quite the same, is it?
No, I came into the city last week for my first face-to-face client meeting. So I went in to see TPI Cap. They got their new buildings. We were apparently the first vendor back in the building for a year, and we sat down and we had a 2-hour face-to-face meeting, brainstorming, whiteboards, and it was a very, very productive meeting. That same group, actually, the week before, I took them out for beers in the city. But it's as a fintech, sales is a big part of what you do, and that process, that's an important part of getting a deal done. Having the social element and actually getting in a room, getting undivided attention. I found that in that session, the people I was with, you had 100% of their attention, rather than when you're on a Zoom call, you might answer a few emails, or the doorbell might ring, or whatever it may be. Yeah, so that's another reason why I'm kind of being quite vocal about getting back into the city as well, because there's lots of important things like that, which is fantastic for the city. And I think I bumped into 5 people who were doing the same on that day.
Yeah, we're getting there, and FOMO's working well, because everyone who's coming up is saying, what a great time they're having. And now we've got the good weather. So, I mean, look, we don't know what's going to happen June the 21st, but, we're already sort of more than halfway there, in my opinion, because people can come back in. I mean, it's the messaging from government, really. Until the government says you can go in, even there's nothing legally stopping you from going to the office, but until the government says everyone come back to the office, then there's that at the moment, some people who are generally nervous about coming out, and I totally get that. Are sort of and senior leaders are saying, well, the government's not encouraging us back yet, so we can't have a flood back. But in a way, I think it's good if it's a slow comeback, because if we had a flood, then it would cause probably too much nervousness, too much mayhem, I suspect.
Well, I think another point is work-life balance as well. I think at home you can tend to get wrapped up in things, whereas when you're in the office, you sort of you're amongst a group of people who are following a similar sort of time schedule, and you have a work life and then your home life. And I think that's really beneficial for people, particularly our generation. It's an important thing that a lot of people are sort of considering. So yeah, it's very important. I think that there is definitely a hybrid balance for people.
Great. Well, it's always good to hear from the younger generation. That's what you think as well. It's probably the older generation is more of the challenge, because they're further up the housing ladder and are enjoying being at home. But also the mentoring bit is really important. I'll just add that in, is there's so much to learn from other people, and that is an important part of it as well. Is there is so much mentoring. I mean, I just remember asking those silly questions which you don't want to ask in front of a whole group of people on Zoom, but you can say quietly, it may sound like a stupid question, but can you help me with this bit? They're coming back to your point, Matt. I think that's right. I think that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I undertook a virtual internship last year, and having been in the city the year before that, it doesn't replace the effects that you get from just shadowing individuals and being in that environment, where you learn more actually from the culture than sometimes from the work you're doing. And so, yeah, it's definitely a huge value add, I think, being in the city and operating in that environment. If we sort of take it forward to green tech and fintech more specifically, the City of London has played a huge role in the Green Horizon Summit, and it's contributed to the Khalifa FinTech Review. There are a lot more green and fintech firms that are appearing, particularly in the UK and in London. Why is it necessary or important for green tech and fintech firms to set up in the city, particularly at the moment? I think we spoke about a lot of these points, but particularly for green tech and fintech firms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to stress, we would love them set up in the city, but my view is, as I say, I look at the UK as a whole ecosystem. So if you aren't setting up here, setting up somewhere in the UK would be great. So we held the Green Horizon Summit back in November, and to be frank, it was much more successful than we ever thought it would be. I co-hosted it with Mark Carney, and it's all about it's getting finance on board, and we call it green finance, and I call it say, we're greening finance and financing green. And eventually, in the next 5 years, hopefully, or even sooner, the word green won't be in front of finance, because all finance will have to be green. Without finance, we aren't going to get anywhere near the 2050 zero emissions target. And what you're beginning to see now is people are focusing really on 2030, because if we keep focusing on 2050, we won't get to the point where we need to look at what we've got to achieve in the next 9 years and then say, okay, we've got 20 years to get to the next goal. But finance is going to be a critical part of it, and that's where the city does come in massively around that. And whether it's fintech or green tech, everything's merging in, because coming back to my point, green fintech, you could call it, whatever. I mean, my view about fintech, of course, is it should be called TechFin anyway, but it's got the fintech brand, and we've got various things underneath it. But it's been very, very successful. And we have this massive opportunity with the G7, COP26 coming up to be the green centre. I noticed today our friends in Singapore, who I have huge respect for, are very quick at moving into opening a new carbon markets there. We're trying to do the same here. And there's room for both of us. We can be, there, but with the Asian bit, with Indonesia down the road and Malaysia, you can see why that would be a great market based in Singapore. So these are all these sort of opportunities I see here in the city. I just think green is the future. So, and we will recognise that. And you can just already see there is a little bit of a green bubble developing, because the capital's there, the finance is all there to invest in these green projects. We now need the projects, and it's great to see that potentially there's a huge project, giga battery project up in Northumberland. But those are the sort of things we need. We've got to put in chargers. We've got retrofitting 6 million plus homes by 2050. It's an exciting space. A huge number of jobs will be created. And as Mark Carney always has said, this is the greatest investment opportunity of a generation.
It seems like green tech or technology that is involved in the renewable space and green space is following a sort of similar trajectory to fintech in a way, maybe a few years earlier, and it's very interesting to see how that progresses and how important a part it plays in the UK as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree with that totally. I mean, we've had fintech, and the next big opportunity is green finance, green tech, green fintech, whatever you want to call it. You can see the momentum. Absolutely agree with you.
I'm interested to know how you think that green tech plays a role in the finance world. How does that transform more materially? I don't think it's spoken about as often as maybe it should be. What do you think the vision is for those finance firms that are operating sort of in that green space as well?
Well, I think the vision is they're looking very much longer term. I know NatWest are taking this very. All finance firms are. I mean, they all have. I happen to have a friend of mine who was at university who's now head of climate strategy at NatWest, and talking to him about what they're looking at, and they're sponsoring COP, but also Barclays are doing green mortgages. They're looking at everything, and then look at what BlackRock's doing. So the big firms are looking at everything and how they can not be accused, by the way, of greenwashing, which is the big issue. But look at just last week, with the news of Royal Dutch Shell and ExxonMobil and Chevron, those votes. So in a way, I think asset management has a crucial role to play, as does private equity, as do the banks. If you're an asset manager, you're the conduit between the corporate and the shareholder, and the shareholders, the likes of the three of us, are pushing to say, we've got to get this sorted, and this is the next big crisis. So I think reiterating the point, without the green finance and the city, we are not going to achieve it. And the trillions of dollars that needs to be spent to get to that zero emissions 2050 has to come from the city. But also it is this opportunity for us to become the green finance centre of the world, which I sort of feel we are at the moment. You look at the number of green bonds that are being issued on the London Stock Exchange, and we've got our own sovereign green bond coming as well before COP, which is a minimum of 15 billion. I think it could be more than that. And then we've also got, TCFD, which I'm sure you know all about, where, sign up to the financial disclosures, the climate change financial disclosures. That's mandatory by 2025. I think everyone's going to sign up way before then because it seems to have got them momentum. But the other thing is, the financing through the biodiversity side. And there's I think it's called the TNFD, which is the nature finance disclosures, which is biodiversity as well. And, we joke beforehand, I'm probably the first Lord Mayor to drink oat milk, but look, that's the way we're headed. And your generation is driving us there. Your generation has a huge opportunity here as well to be involved, but also to influence massively us older ones who probably eat too much beef still, whatever. The sort where the methane is, but it is happening. I mean, my daughter's a vegetarian and is constantly giving me a hard time if I eat beef. I mean, I think we don't all stop. I mean, if you stop completely, then my farming friends have said all the meadows are going to have no, overgrown, and what do we do with that? So, it's like everything. I think there's a balance. And also I know that the technology, as John Kerry says, we don't even know the technology is going to influence getting us to where we want to get to by 20. It's probably just about to be reinvented. And people say that seaweed is the next thing that the cattle are going to start eating, and that's going to produce less methane. So there's so many things going on. It's incredibly exciting as our lifestyle and the world changes.
So just to wrap up, William, because we've got a couple of minutes left, we've been talking about this kind of abundance of opportunity in both fintech and green tech. What would you say to young people that are kind of studying at the moment or just beginning to look at their careers? Because for me, the point of working in fintech is to say you need to be looking at this because it's the place to be. What kind of recommendation or advice would you give to young people, given your own experience as well and your own kind of career path, and you've got children yourself? What would you say to those people looking to get into green tech or fintech, or just working in the city?
So I would say go for it. You're going to be busy until 2050 because there's a long time to go getting to zero emissions, and it's all intertwined. This generation, you're much more entrepreneurial, which I think is great. I mean, as I said, I have children, and my youngest son said to me the other day, I don't want, go into the corporate world. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do my own thing. This is what this generation, your generation's about. And I think that is incredibly exciting for the UK and for everyone as individuals. And green tech is a massive opportunity. So, I mean, whether it's getting involved in the farming side, the retrofitting side, the renewable side, whatever. I mean, there is lots to do, and the tech is going to drive a lot of that going forward in the financial services. So I would go for it. And the other thing I always say is that if you get the opportunity to go and hear about these things, I always say to young people, always say yes to an event, because you never know what you're going to learn, who you're going to meet. It could change your whole career view and what you want to do. So, look, I'm excited. I'm excited for the UK and for the City of London because we have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save the world, but also to be very much involved through green tech and fintech and green as a whole, involved in helping to do that.
Fantastic. Lord Mayor William Russell, thank you very much for this interview. It was very insightful, and thank you, Amrit.